Hello, everyone. Just a quick introduction before we get underway. If you don't know me, I'm Danny Yee. I'm a director of Oxfordshire Livable Streets. And today I'm joined by Filip Watteeuw, Deputy Mayor of Ghent, which is a city in Flanders in Belgium, which is maybe 50% bigger than Oxford. I'll give some numbers later. In 2017, Ghent introduced a radical new traffic circulation plan. This effectively prevented motor traffic transiting through the central area of the city and forced it to use a ring road to move between sectors. Filip will correct me if I get any of this wrong, I hope. And that enabled walking, cycling and public transport to work better. One consequence of this was that I believe they reached their 2030 target for cycling modal share last year. So that was a target of 32% or something like that. Anyway, Mr. Watteeuw is going to talk about the scheme, how it was implemented and how it has worked. And then I'm going to talk a bit briefly about the parallels between this and Connecting Oxford, which is a scheme proposed for Oxford by the city and county councils. And there'll be time for some questions at the end. So leave any questions to win, or maybe ask them in the chat session, and Scott will pick up anything. Just say that the meeting is being recorded, so don't say anything that will embarrass you too much later. There's also some useful material online. So the Ghent City website has English translations and has high-resolution maps and even some interactive mapping. So you can see which routes are blocked and what the routes would have looked like before and after the scheme, I think. And Google Street View is quite useful for seeing what some of these streets look like. Obviously, I've never been to Ghent myself. I think that's it. So anyway, over to you, Filip.
Hello. First, I will take my presentation. Is it possible now? Okay. Can you see the photo of a square in Ghent? Is it all right?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, my apologies for my English. It's not perfect at all, but I hope you understand what we have done. Danny said we had a radical plan, the Ghent Circulation Plan. It's not radical at all. It's very simple and it's very logical. So it's also not the end of a process. It's not the beginning. It's not the end. So this is Ghent, late 80s, early 90s. And as you see, this is Ghent is a city like many other European cities with, at that moment, with lots of traffic jams, with unsafety for cyclists, for pedestrians, unsafe for children, much noise, and so on. Lots of problems related to traffic. So something had to be done. And the policymakers in the 90s, they took some measures. The circulation plan in 2017 is not the first circulation plan. There was already a circulation plan in 1997, and there was a cycling plan in 95. Those measures were rather soft measures. They were not challenging the mobility system. It were no change makers. So there were some results, but the system was still a car system. The mobility system in the late 90s, in 2000, it is a car system. So I became a deputy mayor in 2013, and then we started to think what we could do to better the quality of life in Ghent. So, and we took some plans, 2016 parking plan, circulation plan 2017, and now we are busy with area mobility plans. So why do we do this? It's very simple. I'm not against cars. I'm not an opponent for cars. The only thing we are doing this for is we want to have a city for people, not a city for cars. We want to increase livability. We want to increase safety. We want to increase accessibility. So, and the combination of those three things. This is the situation before the circulation plan of 2017. The situation of car traffic. And this is an amazing image. This is amazing because if you look at it, you can see that only 50%, 51% of car traffic in the rush hour was traffic with a destination. All the other car traffic, the share 49%, was transit traffic, semi-transit traffic, or internal traffic. Only 51% was needed to have a city working. So this means there was too much motorized traffic in the city center. So what we did, it was another time, it was not radical at all. What we did in 2017 was something that the city of Groningen in the Netherlands did in the 70s. So what you have normally, you have a ring road, a beltway, and you have main roads to the center of the city. That is normally the system. What we did was to cut off some main roads to have a system where if you come into the city, immediately, if you follow the roads, immediately you go also out. This is maybe more understandable. What you see here is the center of Ghent. The center of Ghent is an area where about 120,000, 130,000 people live. Ghent is a city of 260,000 inhabitants, but in the center about 130,000 people. What we have in the middle is a car-free zone. Yeah? And then around the car-free zone we have 6 zones, and only for cars something changed. For pedestrians, for cyclists, for public transport, nothing changed, but for cars, it changed. If a car driver wants to go to one of the 6 zones, he has to use the ring road or the beltway. So it was impossible. For the moment, it is after the circulation plan, it is impossible to go from the red zone to the blue zone without using the ring road if you do it by car. So this is very simple. This is not radical. This is not complex. But what the result is that we have no more through traffic in the city center. So how did we prevent traffic going through? How do we prevent? By blocks, bollards, and paint, very simple. By plants and benches, and by number plate recognition cameras. So what we get is we get new pedestrian areas or car-free streets. We give space to pedestrians, to people who are walking in the city. This simple system didn't cost much. all the costs, it's about, the budget is about 5-6 million euro in total for everything, for signalization, for park and rides, the implementation of the circulation plan, and so on and so on. So, but what are the results? We have an increased number of cyclists. In 2012, before I became a deputy mayor, the share of cyclists in the modal split of Ghent was 22%. For the moment, it's 37%. So a real increase from 22% share of cyclists to 37%. We have an increased number of public transport users. The public transport in Flanders, in Ghent and in Flanders, is rather weak and is decreasing. The number of users is decreasing in Flanders, but in Ghent it's increasing. After the circulation plan, we had about 10 to 15% increase of public transport users. Very strange, but not so, in fact, not so strange. We have a decreased travel time for cars within the city center. It's not so easy anymore to get in the city center because of the circulation plan. But the moment you are in the city center, the moment you are in one of those zones, you have a decreased travel time for cars. There is less transit traffic. There are less accidents. It's very important. After the circulation plan, we had a decrease of 35% of accidents. Yeah? Also, we have an improved air quality. The NOx decreased with 18%. And the most important, we have an increased livability. That's what we are doing it for. So, what you see here is the same site at different times. And that's what is happening to a city when you try to be a city for people and not a city for cars. The photo in top is the Grasvlei is one of our iconic places in Ghent, and you see it with cars there everywhere. It's in the, I think, in years in the 90s, I think, and then you see what is happening. It became a meeting place and for some tourists a postcard. This photo. Do you remember the first photo I showed you from the 80s or the 90s? Yeah? This is the same spot, but it's a total different place. I think it's more agreeable to work there than in the 80s or in the 90s. I said it's not the end. It's we have some other plans. What we want to do now is around the city center, have lots of neighborhoods, and we are busy to design 7 new mobility plans for the outskirts, for those neighborhoods. Also, every time the same goal: livability, safety, and accessibility. We're going to decrease the through traffic there. Also, it's the same way of thinking, with the focus on active modes and with an intense participation process. Also, with the Corona crisis, we took some measures to have space more space for people. It's we have, just as in England, we have to stay home for most of the time, and it's very important that people who live in the city have also some space outside, and therefore we are implementing what we call school streets, that are streets that are car-free in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, the moment school starts and ends. We are making squares car-free and so on and so on. So it's always the same. We try to make space for people. Okay, that was the circulation plan. As I said, it was not the beginning and it's not the end. Hello.
Hello, I'm trying to work how to get back on screen.
If you hover over your icon, if you just hover over that little icon, it lets you enable the camera.
Ah, yeah. Oh, thank you for a fascinating talk, Filip. I have to say that does still sound like a radical revolution to me, given that I guess no one in the UK has tried anything like that yet. Although I believe Birmingham is contemplating something along those lines.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that one of the key takeaways for me is that the fundamental approach to improving livability requires tackling car densities and car numbers, and that you can try lots of things without doing that, and you're only going to get incremental improvements. You're going to get small improvements, and it's going to be expensive. And that if you want to drastically improve lots of things, whether it's walking, cycling numbers, public transport speeds, the cheap and fast way to do that, in fact, perhaps the only way to do that, is to do something about the number of cars in the space. So that's my first takeaway. So you mentioned that Ghent has, I think, 130,000 people inside the ring road.
Yeah.
So that must be roughly comparable to Oxford. I think Oxford is a bit smaller, but it has 180,000 people, and it must be about 130,000 inside the ring road. I think Ghent's broader metropolitan zone is 500,000 people.
Yeah.
That's half the size of Oxfordshire. That's like 1,200 square kilometres. So that's looking towards, I don't know, Whitney and Kidlington and towns like that inside Oxford. And you compared it to Groningen's circulation plan, but the Groningen ring road is only 5 kilometres long, whereas the Ghent one, I think, is 13 kilometres long.
Yeah.
And the possible problem for Oxford is that Oxford's ring road is 13 kilometres long. So it's a bigger diversion for people, as it were.
Yep.
Also, if I'm looking at the map, Ghent has an outer motorway ring, like a 25-kilometre motorway ring or 30-kilometre motorway ring that carries most of the through traffic around Ghent, whereas Oxford's ring road has to share with two major through routes, the A40 and the A34. So there are added challenges for Oxford, but it's at least on the same scale as Oxford. So there's nothing intrinsically impossible about this. And so the Connecting Oxford plan, which has been pushed by the two councils in Oxford, envisages something similar. So it envisages 3 central bus gates. For the locals, that's Worcester Street North, South Parks Road, and Thames Street Oxpens, which would block transit through the city centre, narrowly conceived, and 2 peripheral bus gates on Marston Ferry Road and the Hollow Way. So its core aim is to enable faster bus services. If you read it, it's coupled with a workplace parking levy, and the idea is to provide both a carrot and a stick to get people to be able to get to buses to work instead of driving. So that's Oxfordshire Liverpool Street, they're calling for it to be modified to be more like a full circulation plan along Ghent's line. So that means 2 additional bus gates. We suggest they be on London Place and Warneford Lane, basically separating the south and southeast of the city from the eastern part of the city. And I guess you could say we want it to be considered more broadly as a livability scheme, that its primary goal should be to enable walking, cycling and bus services, rather than being more narrowly conceived as a way of controlling congestion. Because otherwise my fear is that they'll do just enough to reduce peak hour congestion, but not enough to enable walking and cycling throughout the day. So this connecting Oxford, let me just show you the map. Okay, sorry, it's not working. It's on our website anyway, if you want to see where the bus gates are, but the people in Oxford probably, most of the people here from Oxford have some idea what that means anyway. I thought I'd hand this over to questions now. Maybe start off with one of my own. So what have you done to, well, Oxford, like I was saying, Oxford has very large commuter flows from surrounding towns. So from like 20 kilometres out, 30 kilometres out, that kind of distance. And the majority of the car traffic coming into Oxford are from those kind of distances in peak hour at least. Does Ghent have similar patterns? And how do people from the border metropolitan area get into the city? So I think this is too far for most people to cycle still.
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Oh, from further out. So inside the city, the ring road itself, I understand that most people are now cycling and that there are fewer car trips. But Oxford has a problem where most of the commuters, or a large number of commuters, come from outside the ring road, further out. The distances of 20 kilometres or 25, 30 kilometres, which is too far for cycling. So does Ghent have a similar problem, and how do people get into Ghent from the border area?
Yes, we have a similar problem. We have about every day 70,000 students. That's a bit, I think, like Oxford. We have also 100,000 people who come to work to Ghent. And what we are trying to do is we have a belt of park and rides. We built a belt of park and rides. And what we try to stimulate is e-biking, because 15, 20, 25 kilometers is possible with the e-bike. And so that's a game changer. Not electric cars, not an electric car is a game changer, but the electric bike. And so we try to get people on bikes, on electric bikes. Yeah.
Okay.
Danny,
Okay.
are you? Oh.
We are building cycle. It's what is important is, I think a circulation plan is needed, because if you only take soft measures, the increase will be very slow. Yeah, soft measures cycling highways and so on. But if you want to have fast results, you have to say things about the position of the car, and that's what we did with the circulation plan. The best cycling plan is a car plan. You have to make choices about the car to have the advantages, the increase for cycling, walking, and so on. That's one. But what is also important is that the moment you are doing this, you have to invest in infrastructure for pedestrians and for cyclists. And that's what we are doing. Cycling highways, cycling bridges. But first of all comes the circulation plan. First of all, we have to make choice. We made choices about the position of the car. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Scott, do you want to come on and put any questions in the audience, or does anyone want to be asking any questions? Who's lined up?
5 or 6 million euros is not much. That's for sure. That's not much. That's about the price of a good cycling underpass, a cycling bridge, and I think that's also one of the strong points of the circulation plan, that it's cheap. You only have to make a choice. What what do we want with the car in the city? So
we've had some questions here. Yes, Danny, that'd be great. So, and I can group them together. Probably the most pressing question that people have is the resistance. How did you handle resistance? And I would divide that into two cases. One is resistance in the press and journalists, and the other is resistance among particular groups, maybe taxis or traders. So if you could just handle that, please.
Yeah. The implementation of the circulation plan was on the 3rd of April in 2017, but the preparation period before was about, I think, 2 years, and in that 2 years there was a very, very, very rough debate. I had some death threats. I had some police was guarding me and so on. So it was very, very hard for me, and for my family, for my collaborators and so on. It was very hard. The reason was that there was a political, there were political battles, and some of the political parties had a very destructive role in the debate, and there was a lot of uncertainty, and that's I understand that. That's normal that people are uncertain about, for example, shop owners and so on. It's very normal that they were uncertain about what should happen after the implementation of the circulation plan. So what we did was to talk about the circulation plan. In the 2 years before the circulation plan, I think there was practically no evening that I was at home. It was also a very hard time for my wife and for my children. So the only thing you can do is to inform people, to talk with them, to debate, and to try to convince them. But it was very difficult, and but what was very strange. One thing I want to tell you. It was very strange. The day there was 2 years of opposition before the implementation of the circulation plan, but the 3rd of April 2017, I went out with a journalist, and I took a trip with the bike together with that journalist, and at that moment, every 50 meters, there was something saying, a resident or a visitor in Ghent saying, "Congrats, good work, good job, well done," and so on. It was incredible. I had an hour of congratulations the 3rd of April. So it means that if there are lots of opponents and there is lots of debate and noise and so on, it doesn't mean that people are against it or all people are against it. The people who were in favor were silent, and afterwards it became good. And in the elections of 2018, I had the best result ever. So it's very important that the debate can be rough, but what is important is to believe in what you are doing.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
We have some questions here about the role of the council. So your colleagues in the council, you mentioned some other political parties, but were there any other levels of authority that you had to bring with you, or did you have power to make these kinds of changes? So in other words, did you have to consult with the national government or some kind of regional government, or did you have enough power within your own assembly?
I had enough power in our own assembly, but I needed other authorities because it was important that public transport made some efforts. It was important that the Flemish government supported me to adapt some infrastructure. So I had enough power, but it was necessary to have the other authorities with me. Is that an answer?
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And we had another technical question about the size of the cells in your plan. How did you determine what would be an appropriate size cell in those zones?
We used the waterways of Ghent, because if you want to make zones, it's very important that you can control if people are getting to other sides or not. So natural borders are very interesting, are very good to use, because a river, you can't, there is only a bridge to pass the river. So to cut a bridge is very efficient. So that's what we did. We looked at what is possible if we use the natural borders.
Yes. Okay. Another question here is, we have a terrible issue here in London, like in many places. Oxford's no exception. We have a terrible problem with bicycle theft. And, we have a problem providing enough secure cycle storage. Was that part of what you helped people with there?
Yeah, that was also a part to help people, because it is like that. The bike theft is a threshold for many people to use their bikes. So important, and still ongoing, because we started in 2012 with a share of 22%. We are now about 35-37% of cyclists in the modal split, and I hope we reached the 40-45% in 4 or 5 years.
And maybe just further along that line, what provision was made for disabled people, both in your planning, so consulting with disabled population, and also in the plans themselves? In what ways does it?
Yeah, but we implemented wandelbus, a walking, what we call a wandelbus. It's a bus, a walking bus. It's a bus that is going very slow through the streets. It's driving very slow through the streets, about 6 kilometers an hour. And people who are elderly people who are not as mobile can hop on or hop off the bus, the low-speed electric bus.
And how many of the wandelbuses are there?
Excuse me?
How many of your wandelbus do you have?
We have about 4 buses, and it's starting at 8 o'clock in the morning and stops at 7 o'clock in the evening.
And I apologize to the crowd. I didn't realize you couldn't hear me posing the questions, so I've brought myself on to pose questions. Danny, you may want to take over in a minute, but another follow-up question we were thinking was, in terms of the number plate recognition, does that allow taxis through, in addition to buses, do you allow taxis through, or do you allow disabled license plate holders through those cameras? What are the, or also, are they only for certain hours of the day, or is it 24 hours of the day?
We have a system of permits and taxis can pass. People who live in the car-free zone can pass. So we have a global system. Also, people, disabled people, and so on. Yeah.
So they're permitted. And what about the hours of the day operation?
How do you mean?
So did you say it was 24 hours a day, those restrictions through the number plate cameras?
Yes, that's 24 hours a day in principle, but not for people who are living there. So, but it's very important. The number plate recognition is only for the car-free zone. For the car-free zone and 2 or 3 places where we don't have natural borders. Yeah. So deliveries and so, for example, for the hours, deliveries can be done till 11 o'clock in the morning and after 6 o'clock in the evening.
We've got another question here. It's about something we call personal travel planning. And that's actually when the council or groups associated with the council will go out to people's homes or workplaces and help them plan their journey and come up with a strategy on how to adopt cycling if they're interested in moving from personal car to cycling, or maybe bus use, anything but personal car. Did you have any kind of personal travel planning?
We have no, not yet, but we have a project, TMAS, Mobility as a Service, where we can provide information to inhabitants on how to make a trip and what modes to use. So we are busy with it. Yeah.
Okay.
We have also a project now already ongoing that provides information to companies, to enterprises for their employees. Yeah.
Excellent. We have a question also. What do businesses think of the plan now? So there was some resistance from shopkeepers. What's the view today?
First, before I answer your question, something very important. If I made one mistake, then it was that this was a mobility project, because I'm deputy mayor and responsible for mobility, and this was a mobility project. If I give tips if I give advice to other cities, the most important advice is that it should be not only a mobility project, but also an economic project, a cultural project, a social project. So don't look at it as only a mobility problem.
Okay.
It's a broad problem, but why is it that it was only a mobility project? Because I'm responsible for mobility, but also because my colleagues, the other politicians, were uncertain about the results, and so at that moment they took a bit of distance. They wanted to see it worked before they engaged, and that's normal. I understand that. But it's very important. It should be a project of all of the city council. It should be a project for mobility, for economics, and so on.
That's an excellent point.
That's
not
very important. And then, so economically, there were many people who were uncertain. And what is very remarkable is that if you look, for example, to the vacancy of how do you call it, commercial units, the vacancy of commercial buildings, you see that Ghent is performing very well. If I look to Antwerp and if I look to Bruges and Brussels, you see that the vacancy is increasing because of e-commerce and so on. In Ghent, it isn't increasing. It stays about the same. So it means that the economic, the dynamic economy is very dynamic in Ghent. And what is important is that the livability increased, we better the city, but also if people come to Ghent to shop, to stroll around and so on, the experience is better. So it's not only a mobility, there are not only mobility results, but the experience to walk around in the city, in a pleasant city, not no noise, no unsafety, not everywhere cars and so on, but a pleasant city, historical city, with beautiful buildings. You should come to Ghent, everyone. But it's a pleasant city now, so the experience is very important, and that's the argument for people who are uncertain about economy.
That's fantastic, because that's the key issue now with the coronavirus. We're very interested in restarting business. The council really has to be focused on that like a laser. And I think they need to make the linkage to this kind of plan as a business-friendly plan, an economy-friendly plan.
It's important that you make the link to Corona, because I think Corona the consequence of Corona will be that more people will go online to shop online. So if you want to have people in your city, you have to have a nice experience, and I think it's important that people stay visiting your city, and so cars don't buy stuff, people do. So get the people to the city, and therefore you have to have a pleasant city.
Thank you. Yeah, I was muted. Danny, I was just going to wonder if you could invite Alison on. This is very impromptu, but Alison was explaining how she was in Ghent recently. And I just wonder maybe if she could just share some of her experience with us, because that'd be quite a nice way to add some color here as well. And I can't do that, I don't think, Danny. I think only you can do that. And in the meantime, Danny, while you're doing that, I can throw another question from the group here. First of all, everyone's super enthusiastic. They just really appreciate you being with us. Oh, I think maybe, do we have Alison now?
Yeah.
Yes, hello. Good.
Hello, Philippe.
Hello.
Just to say, we went and stayed with a Ghentian 2 years ago, in quite close to the centre of town. And one of the cultural observations that we made was that there is pedestrians are king and queen. That actually this person we stayed with, Sutkin, she would take us along the street and she'd decide to cross anywhere, and cars would respect that and stop. And I feel that is, something that is extremely different from how British drivers would treat a pedestrian crossing into the road. And I wondered if that attitude towards people walking and people cycling helped your process of getting through the circulation plan.
I think the circulation plan was already implemented the moment you visited Ghent.
I was there. The circulation plan was implemented already.
Yes, but yes, it helps. But of course, the circulation plan stimulates to behave like that. Yeah. So it's very important that it's a question of policy. It's a question of measures that policymakers take, but it's also a question of people who are reclaiming the streets. Pedestrians and cyclists have the right to be on the streets. It's also their street. So, so the circulation plan stimulates people to behave like that, and by behaving like that, the support for other measures is increasing. So it's something you should get it in motion.
So this was a kind of new behaviour, what we were seeing. It wasn't something that was in the behaviour of Ghent before the circulation plan.
A bit. It was already. I think the circulation plan in '97 was a soft measure. It didn't change the system, but it made possible. It made that people saw what was possible. The circulation plan of '97 made it realize that people began to dream about other measures. So was it in the behavior of Ghentians? No, I don't think so. But there was also already a beginning. Yeah.
Anyway, it was a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Filip, we have a question about liability laws. So you'll be aware in the Netherlands, there's presumption of, I don't know if it's presumption of guilt on the part of a driver, but it's much more scrutiny in the event of an injury or a collision. What's the case where you are?
The same as in the Netherlands.
How important is that, do you believe?
It's very important. It's important that we have to stimulate we have to promote the active ways of moving, and it's important that there is a how do you call it, something, an insurance for the active people, for the cyclists, for the pedestrians. I don't know if my answer is very correct. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah, as Steven Fieber said, he said the Dutch situation is linked to the insurance. I think this is also the same in Belgium.
So there are questions. Also, there's a question box. You can see it says "Ask a question," and there are several in there. So I'm just pitching those out.
Yeah.
Another question is about congestion on the ring road. So we have a fear that when you do this plan, it's going to be gridlock on the ring road.
Yeah.
What's the experience there after you implemented the plan?
That's, as you can see on my face, that's a very, very pleasant question, a very good question, because this was also what people feared. They feared that the ring road would be one ring road of congestion. And very strange, it isn't like that. Why not? Because our goal was not to have people in Ghent, to get people in Ghent by other roads, by other routes. Our goal was to have people switching from car to public transport, or from car to cycling or to walking. Why is there no congestion? Because people changed, because there was a modal shift, because people took their bike. And so you have more traffic from the center to the ring road, but you have less traffic in global. So we have about, on the ring road, the traffic increased with about 8-9%. So that is not as much as many people feared. We did some adaptations to the ring road, but the point is we promoted a modal shift, and we succeeded in it, and so therefore there's no more congestion.
Fantastic. Another question. This one is about bus operators and bus companies. I don't know, maybe those are publicly owned where you live. What was your role? What was their role in planning this whole traffic circulation plan?
The public transport, you mean?
Yep.
The bus companies?
Yep.
They had no role. They were they supported us, but they had not a real role. And what is important is that the circulation plan was very good for the bus companies and the public transport. One of the things I heard so many times, 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times, and so on, was you have to better the alternatives, you have to better the public transport before you implement the circulation plan. And that's not true. What you have to do is to implement the circulation plan, and then the alternatives become better. But what we saw is that the moment we implemented the circulation plan, public transport was faster, was more reliable, because of there were no traffic, there was no congestion anymore in the city center. So, and at that point, faster and more reliable, and so the public transport became better without €1 of investment, with only the investment of the circulation plan. So it's not better, so the alternatives before the circulation plan. No, the circulation plan betters the alternatives.
And you said the ridership is going up.
The
riders are going up.
Yeah.
Are going up. We had a question about parking. I believe you've been removing parking places from the city over many, many years, maybe since 1998. I wonder if you could address the role of removing parking and what the plans are for the future, or whether 2017 was a key moment for parking as well. Yeah.
We had a parking plan in our parking plan in 2016. We increased the how do you call it, the fees, what you have to pay, fees to park in Ghent, and that the result was that some people shifted to cycling and public transport, about 5 or 10% of the car drivers, and that was very important to have space for the circulation plan. Yeah? So that was important. What we try to do is to decrease the number of parking spots, but very slowly. People have to adapt. It's very important that if you promote the ownership, car ownership, you promote traffic, and so you promote congestion and so on. So what we have, if there are if people implement build new houses and projects, building projects, housing projects, we have what we ask to realize from parking spots is very low. Yeah? There's a minimum, there's a maximum. So we try to get a shift also in public space, and that's important, because if you want to have a livable city, You have to have space for trees for children to play. So if you look to the streets now in many cities in Belgium and in Europe, 70% of the space is for the cars. So what we try to change it. Yeah. Is this an answer? Because I have the impression I'm not so clear.
No, I think it's very clear. Danny, did you want to come back on? So we'll probably just want to conclude maybe with one or two statements or further questions. I can look around.
There's also someone Dutch speaking in the crowd.
We have a few. Oxford is a very international city. There's quite a reasonable number of Dutch people here.
Ah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to say thanks very much for coming, Filip, and I hope you enjoyed that. We certainly learned a bit from it. It was inspiring to hear it firsthand. You know, the films kind of often, you know, light over the rough bits and leave out the death threats and the uncertainties, as it were. So, you know, it's good to know that there are problems and again get some advice on how to avoid them, maybe. Yeah, I hope that we can do something like that in Oxford, and maybe you can come and visit us and see what you've inspired when this is possible again.
Okay.
A huge thank you, Mr. Watteeuw. Really, really appreciate your time. It's a great thing for us.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Good. And I would just say to everyone else, if you don't need to rush off, we'll just show you a few pictures of Connecting Oxford so you can see what the council has in mind and what our request is or what our suggestion is to upgrade it a little bit so it reflects more like what they have in Ghent. Does that sound good?
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. And visit Ghent. The mayor said I had to say that you all have to visit Ghent. Okay.
It's at the top of my list.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So Danny, I was just going to share screen very quickly and just show our post. Let's see. I don't know if I'll have any more success than you did. Chrome tab. Right. So this is just from our website. And you can see the way Connecting Oxford, just as a quick rundown, Connecting Oxford, as Danny mentioned, has these central areas in the middle. It prevents traffic from going through the center of Oxford, which is a great innovation. And it also aspires to create a bus route linking the north of Oxford down to Redbridge Park and Ride here in the south via the so-called B4495, which some people call an inner ring road here in Oxford. And so it has, the Connecting Oxford does have a bus gate here, up here at Marston Ferry Road, and another one down here on Hollow Way. And the idea there is really to give priority to that bus service so that people can substitute out of their car and use instead a fast, reliable bus. And we are very enthusiastic about this plan, but in a COVID context, even post-COVID, it seems that bus usage will be at least restricted for some time. At least in the immediate future, it won't be possible to rely on the bus quite so much. And this plan really is a congestion plan rather than a livability plan. And it is the case that you can upgrade Connecting Oxford with just 2 more bus gates. And so the picture I'm showing you here is a vehicle entering Oxford from the south. They have 2 or 3 options for reaching, say, the JR, for example, or other employment sites in Headington. They could go around the Ring Road, but they could just as easily go through Donington Bridge, Iffley Road, and maybe several rat runs in this area, and St. Clement's to reach Headington. And that won't change under Connecting Oxford if we just have the 7 bus gates. Now I'll show you the picture of where the 2 extra bus gates could go. And it's actually quite an elegant solution. Unlike Ghent, where they actually, if you look into their details, they had to install point closures in many, many places. It was very complicated. Here in Oxford, because of the accident of geography that we have, it is the case that only 2 additional bus gates, which I'll show you here, would be necessary to close off the East Oxford from Headington, in the sense closing off from short-circuiting private motor vehicle traffic. Of course, it won't be cut off at all. It will make it much more accessible for people using cycles and people using buses once that becomes a higher a more enabled form of transportation. So those 2 additional bus gates are here at London Place, which is on the west end of South Park, and then here at the very east end of South Park is Warnford Lane. And if you look for yourself, you'll find that actually just those 2 plus the existing bus gate at Hollow Way, the proposed one, are enough to actually result in this kind of Ghent style of segregation of the city, at least to motorized traffic. And again, bus transit wins hugely from this as well, because think of the number of bus routes that go through St. Clement's area and Iffley Road, and this would allow them to travel so much faster. So those are the things we just wanted to say about what we call Connecting Oxford Plus. If this is something you want to see happen, then really encourage you to read this on our website, the Oxfordshire Livable Streets, and then immediately get in touch with your councillors, both your county council and your city councillor, because both councils are responsible for connecting Oxford, and try and encourage them to raise this already very ambitious plan to something that would be ready and appropriate for the moment that we're in now. And I will stop. Oh, I think I've stopped sharing screen now. Anything else, Danny? Anything else you want to say, or anyone else want to take questions while we're here? Yes. Difficult to tweak Connecting Oxford because it's at such an advanced state. It may be the case, okay, I'm just reading the question. It may be the case that the council needs to reconsult on Connecting Oxford. I will say it was very clear in the existing survey the council did. They said they acknowledged that Connecting Oxford as it was may create additional problems, and that those may need treatments, such as low traffic neighborhoods, but certainly other restrictions could be just more bus gates. That's another way. So hopefully it could be compatible with the existing Connecting Oxford plan, and therefore not constitute an entire new reconsultation. But if necessary, then yes, they should. I'm not in position to take any questions about, I'm not able to take questions about what the council's doing, and it's not a Zoom call. So I think we've overrun our hour, but definitely thank you for indulging us. Danny, I don't know if anything else you wanted to come in and say on any of those points before we close this out.
No, all things. Thank you everyone for coming, I guess. Thanks everyone for coming, and yeah, stay in touch with us, go on our mailing list, look at our website, talk to your councillors. I think Connecting Oxford is really the biggest change that anyone's attempted to do to transport in Oxford for whatever, probably. So really we have to get this pushed through in the best form possible.
Thanks, Danny. I think you as host can close.
Okay, yes. Bye everyone.